What kind of coverage am I going to be able to get? The whole show is going to cost you at least 3 times that amount of money. The point of the metric is to build a benchmark. There is no perfect trade show program.
Marketing, like a symphony, is a harmonious blend of instruments, but without the proper direction, it's just noise. Welcome to the Supply Chain Marketing Show, presented by Supply Chain Brain Media. From the art of storytelling to the science of data, we'll uncover marketing strategies that drive success. Trade show marketing and ROI? Betsy Earle from Event Driven Solutions explains it's all about the metrics. Now here's our host and marketing guide, Ralph Henderson.
In the supply chain space, trade shows are the lion's share of our marketing budget. The question is, are they the lion's share of our revenue?
Hi, I'm Ralph Henderson. I'm the guide and host of the Supply Chain Marketing Show, brought to you by Supply Chain Brain Media. Today, we're going to talk about something very near and dear to the supply chain marketing person's heart, and that is trade shows. So get ready, buckle up, and listen, because we've got somebody today that's really going to help us, somebody that's got a ton of experience. And, we want to talk about this because with trade shows being a unique part of our budget and how we integrate that, as a business and, especially the cost, it does become a substantial amount of money, time, effort, coordination between the different groups, marketing and sales, and the executives. So today we're going to hear from a subject matter expert that's going to not only help us with that, but help us to understand that, we're going to have clarity. Clarity is my word of the year, by the way, for this year, because content is king. I believe clarity is queen. So we want to be really, really clear because these trade shows can be very complex. So she's going to help us with the clarity. She's going to help us with the ROI. She's going to help us with the process, the understanding of just how to do this. And I know most of this you've heard, done, or experienced, and I get that. But I promise I selected this person because I know she will be of value to you. She's been of value to me and with the industry, and she's spoken at many of our industry training initiatives. So I know that she has a lot to offer. Today we have Betsy Earle. She's a marketing consultant, speaker, and training. She's also a managing and director and founder of Event Driven Solutions. Betsy works closely with her clients to execute successful trade shows. She's constantly out on the floor. She's checking out events all the time. It's what she lives and breathes. And she's always planning for the next show. So I really tell you, she helps you to uncomplicate what is a complicated situation for us. Now, as far as her accolades and credentials, you can look her up. But I mean, Betsy is certified trade show and event marketer. She's actually been trained, got her MBA. She's worked in marketing and statistics. So she has the credentials. She has the education. And with that, we want to bring on Betsy Earle, and we're going to talk about all things marketing. Hey, Betsy.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, listen, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. We know it's going to really be a great show. And we want to come right out of the gate with a question on philosophy. So we know as supply chain marketing professionals, we have to get ready for the show. We have to do the show. And then there is activity after the show. I affectionately call the P cubed process, which is promotion, production, post-show. Can you share with our audience with what your philosophy is with those things?
Yeah. So I think that trade shows are obviously the largest marketing spend for many companies, especially in the supply chain industry where you have heavy duty equipment that you might need to ship to your show, which is going to cost you a bit of money just in shipping alone and getting the products onto the trade show floor. And so when making those decisions about exhibiting and how you're going to exhibit and how you want to go to the market with your presence, I believe that you want to always make sure that you have a strategy and some objectives that are going to take you to the show so that you are assessing before you leave your facilities what it is you're trying to accomplish and what it is that you want your attendees to walk away with. Because I think that a lot of trade show exhibitors tend to kind of focus on the what they know about themselves and forget to think about what it looks like from the attendee's vantage point. And so if you think about a lot of household brands, those companies believe, oh, well, everybody knows me, so I just have to show up and they'll come. But effectively, regardless of the size of exhibitor, you really want to be thinking about who it is that you are and what it is that you want your attendee to walk away with. Because without having that strategy from the beginning, it's hard to have an effective implementation plan on the trade show floor.
Okay, next question, and it's one I hear all the time, so I'm glad you're here so you can answer it. And that is, how do I decide what show to go to?
Yeah, sure. So there's tons of shows, and as marketing professionals, you are constantly being approached by magazines, by publications, by advertisers, and everyone has the next best show, the next biggest show, the next I want your money show, right? And so when you're trying to make those decisions, I think it's helpful to be thinking about again, who is your target customer and where are they going to be? So, for example, on a large scale, when you have a national show that brings people from everywhere, your larger shows, you have to make a bigger splash. So, if you're a smaller company, it's harder to reach the attendance. However, the attendance is greater, so you might be able to get in touch with some of those people that you might never see elsewhere. On the flip side, when you have a smaller regional show, now you're talking about, okay, this is a targeted customer. Maybe you're a smaller fish at a big show, but you're a bigger fish at a small show. And so by thinking through who is the customer and looking at the target customer base to see, are these distributors, are these manufacturers, are these press, who is coming to the show and what kind of coverage am I going to be able to get while I'm there, that's going to help you to make a decision. And also, especially when you're vetting out brand new shows, you want to take into consideration, does this show have a history? And does this show provide a show prospectus, which is in essence the breakdown of who's coming to the show? Because that right there is the data behind the show that's going to validate whether you should be attending. And so a show without data isn't really a show. And so when you're making those choices, you want to make sure that those people have the background who are trying to sell you the booth space. And another thing to take into consideration when you're making your choice is by looking at the cost of the booth space itself. And by that, I mean the concrete, right? The square footage. And so if you know that the square footage is going to cost you XYZ dollars, whatever that total is, you want to think about the whole show is going to cost you probably at least 3 times that amount of money. And so by thinking about your budget, again, maybe a super large show costs more per square foot, but maybe you know that your customers are going to be there. Or as a smaller company looking to first go out and exhibit, maybe you want to start small and see where you can make your presence on a smaller forefront first.
Yeah, so you touched on a couple of really key things for seasoned and new supply chain marketing professionals. One is the metric of 3x the floor space. So that's a really good thumb rule for everybody out there. If you're thinking about your budget, just get from the show folks what that cost is. I think the other thing, again, you talked about starting out with a smaller booth. I talk to people about this all the time, Betsy. It's like you don't have to have a big booth. As long as you have something, you're part of that show. So here's a question that the audience wants to know about, and you may or may not have an opinion on this, but when I hear people talking about evaluating shows and they talk about going to a show and not exhibiting versus exhibiting to evaluate a show, what kind of goes through your mind and what do you articulate to these people when they say that?
So I think there's validity in checking out a show to see what it's like before you exhibit the first time. However, I think for companies that make a habit of that, it tends to give the impression that your organization doesn't necessarily have their act together enough to exhibit or the budget. And so it's kind of like a perception thing, in my opinion. For example, when you go to a show and you stay at the host hotel costs more money versus if you go down the street and stay at the Holiday Inn. And you could do that. But when you want to be perceived as a player, you want to make sure that your presence is as close as possible to the action. And part of that is by actually having a booth.
I think you said it very kindly. You just send the wrong signal when you're like, oh, buy my stuff. I have really good products and services. I'm just not willing to exhibit them for you because I don't think you're worth the money.
And technically, a lot of shows can kick you off the show floor.
Oh, there you go. Right.
It's called suitcasing.
Uh-huh.
And that's the industry term for it. And basically that means that if you're walking a show that you're not exhibiting at, but you're caught selling to exhibitors, they can remove you from the building.
So there's another good reason to get something.
Yeah.
We'll be back after this brief message.
In today's complex supply chain, marketing has never been more critical. But are you leveraging the full potential of your marketing efforts? Supply Chain Brain Media created 2 resources to help you discover what's new and what works. The Supply Chain Marketing Group series is designed to educate you on services and how to implement them into your marketing program. On the Supply Chain Marketing Show, hear firsthand how experts are implementing the elements from the 5 rings of supply chain marketing to drive results. Ready to elevate your marketing game? Schedule a 30-minute consult today. Email Morgan at supplychainbrainmedia.com. Supply Chain Brain Media, your guide to marketing success.
And now back to our show.
Okay, so here's a great question, and I know it's a broad question, but please help the audience out. So, all right, so now we've decided to do the show, we've decided to exhibit. What should we think about when it actually comes to marketing?
A lot of businesses get caught up in just getting to the show and just getting their booth to the show. And it's important to make sure that you're spending the time and the money in the pre-show, the during show, and the post-show marketing activities. And what I mean by that is that you do want to tell people you're coming to a show, even if it's as basic as putting it in your email blast, telling people your booth number, having your sales team reach out to customers and say, hey, don't forget to stop by booth 2705, and also using your social media channels to make sure that you're getting that information out there. It could be as basic as that, or you could get as complex as purchasing the pre-show list, sending email blasts through the show platform. However, that can get pricey. But again, ROI. And, I get a lot of questions, it's a little tangent, Ralph, but I get a lot of questions about ROI on trade shows. And while oftentimes it's hard to actually give a specific metric to your return, there are ways to measure that by thinking about contact points, impressions, how many times that people are reaching out to you in response to your social media, etc. And my belief is that no marketing strategy is fully executed unless you've considered some sort of benchmark metrics to get you to determine whether it was successful or not. So, for example, I'm going to send 500 emails out prior to the show to my customer database, and I want 312 of those people to open the email blast. Even if your metric is completely wrong and the results show something different, you're starting to gain information as to what's working and what's not working. Then when it comes to at show, making sure you're also talking to your current customers. I think this is extremely important. Remembering customer lifetime value, keeping the customers you have, showing them your new products. And, sometimes exhibitors dismiss their current customers because they're like, oh, Joey's already a customer. But Joey is going to bring his buddy over to your booth to see your new product, and he also wants to know what your new products are. And sometimes those people just want attention, right? And then you've got the post-show follow-up and making sure that exhibitors sometimes get back home and they get back to their inbox, and their inbox has 52 million emails. I get it. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Get the t-shirt every time I go to a trade show. However, when you get back, you spent that time and that energy going to that show. You want to make sure that you have a process prior to leaving to the show to follow up with those people after the fact.
Nice. Yeah, nice. So so you were talking about, pre-show telling people you're going to the show. Just wanted the audience to see this is what I sent out the last time I went to a show, just to let them know
Hey, I
I
know
was
that guy.
just to let them know I was coming. I don't know if you can see, but I pop up, right here, and then I pop up over here.
Oh, there he is.
So so I agree, and the reason I brought that up wasn't to brag about the graphics people who do my stuff, although they're wonderful. The reason I brought that up is because of how important it is to do that stuff beforehand. So we really appreciate that. And another thing that I hear as it relates to the preparation and the post show is the whole relationship between marketing and sales. So you do training, you help these people with that. Give them some nuggets on how to maybe do that or do that better.
Yeah, so across the board, this is a challenge for companies. I wouldn't never call out anybody in particular, but I see constantly where there's this marketing mindset and this sales mindset. And in our perfect world, those two organizations and groups of people will work together and come up with a strategy together. And I think a lot of that is just the communication piece. And again, talking about things in advance and trying to work together. And so sometimes marketing teams tend to get excited about the bling and the glitz and the glam. And as a marketer, it's important to think about metrics again and also think about, a lot of exhibit builders will try to encourage exhibitors to spend a bunch of money on a big, sexy, blingy booth. And from a marketing perspective, that might look cool, but that might not be as effective as something a little bit more strategic. And on the sales side of things, I feel like a lot of sales people want all the bling also. And so they are also typically not aware of what some of the things cost in the trade show floor. And so by coming together and setting up, and I think we mentioned this at the very beginning, Ralph, but the strategy and objectives. Okay, I'm going to the show for this purpose. I want to promote this new product. I want to have meetings with 12 of our customers, and I want to meet 27 new people, right? And so if you, as the sales team, can communicate those goals to the marketing team's interest might be, I want to grow our social media base by 10%. And so if you collectively between sales and marketing can come up with what those goals are, that's going to help everybody to make choices that are effective versus kind of the throwing money at it to see if it sticks mentality.
Well, and it goes to our clarity where if you have metrics of, look, this is how many people I want to touch before the show. And there's nothing wrong with this to our viewing and listening audience, by all means, come up with numbers with how many people do you want to touch and reach out to? How many people do you want to engage? So since you brought up a few metrics, and this is a supply chain audience, let's talk about metrics from can you give the audience for just, again, thumb rule on how much effort before, during, and after the show is what they're doing, like roughly?
I would say 20% before, 20% after, and 60% in the middle.
Okay. So for effort and money, or just effort, or both?
I would say maybe 20% to 25% of your total exhibit spend should be allocated to marketing mechanisms.
There you go.
Across the program.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 20, 60, 20 for effort, and then 25% of all in should be marketing, promotion, engage, that sort of thing.
And also, I think that the typical question that I get when I raise these types of thoughts are, well, Betsy, we don't have any metrics. We have nothing, right?
Right.
And so, we've shipped our booth to the show. We talk to people when we get there. We scan their badges. We follow up with them in an email, and then that's it, right? And so the point of the metric is not necessarily to have a great result. The point of the metric is to build a benchmark. So if you use it for the first time in 2025 at a show, now next year you have a baseline to gauge against and say, okay, well, okay, that marketing didn't work. That email blast didn't work. Nobody followed us on social. Who cares? Nobody's there to call you out on that. However, if you don't know what you don't know, and next year you say, well, I'm going to spend 3 times that on social media and it didn't work the first year, maybe you're better off trying a new mechanism.
Oh, I like it. I like this. So what you're saying is have the metric not necessarily to brag about achieving it, but really A, to have something to strive for, but B, better yet, to have something to measure against.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it a lot. All right. Sadly, we're at the end of the show. It always goes way quicker than we think. But
So
what
much
is
to say.
Yeah. What is that parting? So if you wanted to give this audience something to remember and something to do, like, hey, remember this, don't forget about this as it relates to trade shows, preparation, production, and post-show. And then here might be a cool next step for you. So what would those be?
Sure. So I think take an assessment of where you are and what you've been doing, and bring it back to your team and have that open conversation with sales and marketing and say, what do we think is working? What do we think isn't working? And I feel like that's a place where we put our egos aside and we kind of just brief through it and say what's working, what's not working, so that then you can have a place to start with. Is something I would suggest as a to-do list item to take away. And another thing to just think about is, while I know that this is a very expensive piece of your marketing budget, a lot of it is there's not really a right or a wrong. So by just starting to measure and do your best on the metrics and start thinking about the big picture, it's going to get you moving forward in the right direction. So there is no perfect trade show program.
Right.
It's always evolving.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So thank you, Betsy Earle, Event Driven Solutions. What she just did was gave us a really nice overview on what to think about, what to do as it relates to shows. If you want more information, more details, she'd be happy to talk with you, happy to work with you. Because remember, folks, like she said, we put a lion's share of our marketing budget into this. Our goal for 25 maybe should be to create metrics to get a lion's share of the revenue out of them, because at Supply Chain Brain Media, our mantra is, instead of knocking on doors, how about they knock on yours?
Ooh,
Thank you. So with that, we want to say thank you again, Betsy. Thank you for those who listened and watched, and we wish you guys the best year ever.
To discover how you can blend your marketing instruments into a harmonious sound and rise above the noise, schedule a 30-minute consultative session. Email morgan@supplychainbrainmedia.com. Again, that email address is morgan@supplychainbrainmedia.com. If you have any questions or episode suggestions, you can send those to morgan@supplychainbrainmedia.com. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Supply Chain Marketing Show, presented by Supply Chain Brain Media. This is an omni-channel production in conjunction with PWE Media.